Hi, it's me again. Part 3 on helping you to understand that when it comes to marketing you, growing your business, making your mark in the world, storytelling is the way. In fact, the future belongs to the storyteller. So today, we're going to try and discover once again what stories can do, and then how you can start right now. You can become a great storyteller, and as a result of that, you'll be able to market you, sell more stuff, make more money, have more fun, and perhaps even change the world. That's coming up on The Marketing Life. Welcome back. I'm Stan Houston, and you've been a part of a storytelling experience. We've told lots of stories because, as we've told you before, this whole thing, these programs we've been producing on The Marketing Life, a series of 4, a trilogy plus 1 on how you can do this. Tell me a story, then I will buy from you, because I by you. That's right. Remember, the marketing life is not your media and your message. It's how you treat others, how you tell stories, how you demonstrate how good you are, how useful you are, how helpful you are. In effect, marketing is not about how slick you are. Marketing is how you care for and treat other people. It's how you live your life. And that's why this program is very different from all those other marketing shows out there. And of course, being different is the essence of good marketing. And hopefully, your humble coach and host, Stan Houston, I'll live up to that by trying to be useful to you and help you tell stories and market yourself and become better at selling and marketing you and the good stuff you're bringing in to help people. So, there we go again. Remember, it's about telling stories so that people buy you and then they will buy from you. Now, just a bit of a review. If you want to go back from our things we had first, we said in our first show, storytelling is the only effective means of communication. And I mean that. I'm not backing off of that. If you want to affect people, you bring stories forward. You help people create stories. And just as we saw in our first story about the Dream Rangers, we hopefully help people have hope that things can be better. They see a future story because of what you bring into their life. And then in part 2, we talked about this last week, remember? Looking for the stories to tell. Particularly see how good movies. Look and find out more and more about how stories work. I told you a little bit about the book Epic and about the book by Annette Simmons called The Person with the Best Story Wins. And Peter Gruber's book on Tell Me, or Tell to Win. Now, I'm not so sure it's about winning, but it is about making a difference. And if you make a good difference in the lives of enough people, in the end, for sure, you will win. So that's what that's all about. Now, remember this. I have it, and it's well marked up. If you're really serious about being a good storyteller, in fact, Robert McKee has maybe even some competition. You can go Google him and find out that he actually does an internet show very much like this, on the story log, as he calls it. Now, it's pretty expensive, and then he has seminars, oftentimes around the country, and you can learn the art of scripting, screenwriting. And this is for people who want to be screenwriters and novelists and writers, but oftentimes, as he's discovered, that, in effect, business people of all kinds are now learning that if they can learn how to craft a good story, make a good video. Remember, the world is changing. Your marketing is going to be, people are going to see an iPad tablet, and they're going to see your video, hear your radio show, see your video like this. And if you want to keep them engaged, you're going to have to tell a story. So if you want to be a serious storyteller, you may want to check this book out. Now, with that in mind, though, I'm going to do a little self-promotion. This is my battered up old book. It's called, in effect, You Make the Difference, and it's How to Market You. And what I tell people in that book, and it's being revised under something a little bit different. How about the marketing life? We're going to discover that this is true. Chapter 7, the future belongs to the storyteller. And when I tell that story, it's just that. I talk about Sam. Sam was an insurance guy, and he was selling insurance the way you've all been taught. You know the deal. He brings out the brochures, he brings the illustrations, and typical selling. And I'm convinced that everything you've learned about sales training is wrong. Features and benefits and stories about the company, not stories, facts and figures about the company. And he was frustrated. It wasn't going well for him. So finally, because he wanted to be rescued, he hated his work, he wasn't doing well, Sam's story led to Stan's story. And Sam said, "Can you help me?" And so I said, "Well, tell me a little bit about yourself. And tell me about the people you've helped. And tell me what your hopes and dreams for people are." Now, Sam had grown up in North Dakota, interesting childhood, and he was really a helpful, wonderful guy. And all of a sudden, Sam began to change. That's right. He started to laugh more. I mean, he'd help people, and he'd seen lots of things, and pretty soon there was almost an entire change in Sam's appearance when Sam stopped selling insurance and became a storyteller. And I said, "Sam, why don't you just do that? Why don't you tell stories? You're good at that. And I can understand far better what you do and how you help people. You're talking about some boring insurance company and boring facts and figures and things about death and dying and disease and all of that stuff. Tell stories about how you've helped people." And you know what? Sam called me back and said, "Hey, this is working. I like this. I'm just sitting down and telling people stories about what I do and asking them to tell me a little bit more about their stories." And then I said, "Remember, don't find the facts, Sam. Find the stories." And he said, "Yeah." Well, a few months later, it was working out well for Sam, but then he called me and he said, "Hey, I got this great recommendation." Not a referral. Remember that from my other show? Don't ask for referrals, deserve recommendations. He was going to meet a young doctor at a major clinic here in Minnesota where I was living at that time. And he said, "Well, you know what? I'm going to really be professional about this. I'm not going to do the storytelling. I'm just going to do the straight up thing, because this guy is a big name doctor and he's really coming up." And I said, "Sam, just tell the stories and listen to his stories." You know what happened? That's what he did. He told stories about how he grew up. They found a mutual connection between his family and the young doctor's family, and stories flowed. And as Sam said to me afterwards, "You know what? This is going to be one of the best cases I have ever had, I think. I just told stories and listened to his story, and we're starting to do business." And he said, he called me up a week later and said, "I got a note from the young doctor," and the note said, "Thank you, Sam. It was so great to meet with you. You are the most professional salesperson I have ever met." Now, he had been hustled by a lot of insurance guys and a lot of people who had been after him to buy. But when Sam was authentic and real and told stories and shared stories, incredible things happened. So, as I often used to say when I did late night broadcasting, just let that kind of sit on your head for a while. Sam is enjoying life, making more money, having more fun, selling a lot more insurance and investments because Sam went from selling insurance to telling stories. Now, in my own book, I outline, as I said, the future belongs to the storyteller. And let me give you some points about some of the things that will go into a good story. Now, here's the deal. If you want to, you don't have to buy the book. See, this is a great deal. If you want to, you can email me at stan@marketinglifecoach.com, stan@marketinglifecoach.com, and I'll actually send you a PDF of the chapter from my book on storytelling. The future belongs to the storyteller. And you can get all of these details with more details just because I want to be useful and helpful to you. So that's the way the story is. Now, in that, I'm going to help you understand a little bit of what goes into a good story. Now, this is just a little 5-minute summary. There's more to the story, and there's more you can do, but let me help you. Whenever you're going to tell a story, it cannot just be a rambling thing about, I got up in the morning and did this. It can't be a free-flow narrative. You have to ask the question, what's the point? Now, we used to say the moral of the story. Now, the best story is not where you say the moral of the story. You let people discover the moral for themselves or the point of the story. But a good story always has a point to it. So think about that. As I'm looking at a story or coming up with a story, what's the point? What happened? What changed? What became useful? What is different? Because I'm telling this story. The story has the moral of the story. The point of the story is, finally, you name it. Think about that. So as you're looking at your stories, it's not just a random collection of things that happen to you during the day or wherever. It has a point. What's the point? What's the predicament? Now, what has actually happened is that something has gone wrong. Now, every good story has something where there's been a mess up or there's a problem or something has come into a person's life and they don't like it. They need to change things. Now, remember the Dream Rangers? There were those 4 men who, as they were living out their life, realized they could not stand the way they were living anymore. They were not ending well. They were dying and fading away like rotten old men, and they weren't going to do that anymore. They had to be free. They had to live. They had to recapture something of their youth, some of the passion that had motivated them as young men. And so you'll have to think about not only what is the point of the story, but it has to have a predicament. Beauty and the Beast, that's a predicament. Cinderella, that's a predicament. What's the predicament? So you have to ask yourself the question, what's the predicament? Something has to be overcome. Something has to change. Something has to be done. We have to try and escape from the Titanic. We have to come back to Earth from Apollo 13. We have to help somebody who doesn't know how they can make sure that if something terrible happens to them, that their family is going to be okay. What's going to happen to me if I get sick? What's going to happen to me if? What am I going to do now? What's the predicament? Every good story has a predicament, something that we have to deal with. And life is difficult. Life is dealing with stuff. It's dealing with the day and dealing with the future. So tell me, what's the predicament? Now, I'll tell you this, stories cannot be about things and machines. Now, I know some people think you can have a story about a car or a road grader or a mover or a machine, and some people are fascinated by that. But please keep in mind that is an exposition of engineering. Stories truly have to center around people. Now, that's why some people who are selling cars or bridges or selling things, they tell things, they try and tell a story about the thing, whatever it is. Tell me how good the taco is. Tell me how fresh it is. No, The story has to be about people eating tacos, not about what a taco is or what goes into it. And what we've also found out is that people like animals. Oftentimes, if you include a pet or an animal in the story, it makes for a better story. Don't ask me why. I just know that's true. You go back to the story of the Garden of Eden. There we have the snake. The animal makes the appearance. Maybe we can learn something from that ancient story. So if you can include in your story people who are doing things, challenged by things, overcoming things, and for some reason it always helps. As my friend said, would you like to see a picture of my dog? The more you can have about an animal in the story. Either a nice animal or a bad animal, it seems to enliven the story. And think about some of the fairy tales you might have heard as children. Remember? The Big Bad Wolf. There we go. Okay. Pathos is powerful. Now, a story has to have feeling. Now, perhaps you've heard of the word pathetic. Now, the word pathetic comes from the same word as pathos. When we say something is pathetic, we feel bad. A person is incompetent. They're a dunderhead. They don't do things well. Their behavior, their persona, it's pathetic. But pathos means deep feeling. Now, the reason I encourage you to tell stories is the way you get people to change their behavior is not through facts, it's through feelings. I'm sorry. Some of you rational, logical, analyticals believe that you can tell people the facts. Like that old Dragnet character on the 1950s show, Dragnet said, "Just the facts, ma'am." Facts don't move people. Feelings move people. And so when you can bring things into it which reflect how people feel. Oftentimes I say when you're working with people, you're asking this question, what do you want them to feel? What do you want them to experience? What do you want them to be able to do? That's what the story is about. Pathos is powerful. Now, there has to be a little bit of a puzzle from time to time, and this goes along with the predicament. And, okay, how are we going to do this? We can't figure it out. This, of course, is the classic mystery. Many of us love, now, I admit, I love these, the Vince Flynn novels and the Daniel Silva novels about how they're going to go out and capture this mean, nasty terrorist. They're thrillers. They're page-turners. In effect, we're going to figure out, well, how is the hero going to get out of this trouble? How am I going to get out of the predicament? And I can't see it. It doesn't make sense to me. And somehow what happens in true Sherlock Holmes style. And I oftentimes point out that I think one of the things that happened, my daughters read so many of those because they didn't have TV where we grew up in other parts of the world. They read stories of Nancy Drew and Sherlock Holmes, and they learned the power of figuring things out, overcoming the puzzle. And then, in effect, you go back to the point. Remember our comment about, the secret Jesus knew was tell stories, and many of you know that basically he told parables. Rather than teach facts and figures and theology and doctrine, he said, it's like, and he would tell a story. It's a metaphor. And I have discovered, in effect, the more parables you can tell to help people understand. It comes alongside, and of course the parable is the point. Here is the Good Samaritan. The point is, be one. The parable talks about somebody who gave to the Red Cross or who had something that they did to rescue somebody. And the point is, be like them. So that is important. And then finally what happens, that when people hear the story, I get it. That's the deal. I get it. And when it's done right, they get it. And as we'll learn next week, people who who get it on their own. Now, please keep in mind, you know what? Nobody can argue with my story. It's my story. It's a story of my experience. They may be able to argue with my opinions and my facts and my figures, but when a story is well told, in effect, as we used to say, the penny drops. Ah, now I see. Now I get it. And oftentimes the way people get it is not because you gave it to them. It's because you came alongside of them. And the word parable comes from the word parabola. You know, like a dish antenna, it bounces off the side and hits the center. From the word parallel, it comes alongside. And then as a result of that, people are not hit with it, but they get it because it bounced off something else and came back to them. So, there we go. And I trust that you get it. That storytelling is the way to market you and to build your business, to have more fun and make more money, and perhaps to make a difference in the lives of others. That's part 3. And the rest of the story is next week when we conclude on how you can better market you, sell your stuff, build your business, because indeed the future belongs to the storyteller.